Ever wonder why your body reacts before your brain even has a chance to catch up? Well, today we're going to dive into the fascinating and sometimes kind of weird wiring that makes us do, well, that. I mean, think about it. You hear that specific ping from your phone, and bam, your heart jumps, you feel this jolt of anxiety or maybe even a rush of excitement. It's totally automatic, a physical thing. But why? It's just a sound, right? Well, the answer is an instinct. It's actually something your brain has been taught to do. And this all comes down to the idea of learning. But we're not talking about studying for a test. In psychology, learning is any pretty permanent change in how we act that comes from experience. That gut reaction you have, that's a learned behavior. And the story of how we figured this out starts, believe it or not, with dog slobber. Yeah, you heard me. To understand that little notification sound, we need to travel back in time to a Russian lab and a scientist who wasn't even trying to study the brain. It was a complete and total accident. Meet Ivan Pavlov. And what's really key here is that he wasn't a psychologist. Nope, he was a physiologist, a scientist, who was just trying to study the digestive system in dogs. But he kept running into this odd little problem that was getting in the way of his research, a problem that would end up changing everything. So here was the puzzle. Pavlov saw that the dogs would start drooling before any food was even near them. They'd salivate when they saw the food dish or when they heard the lab assistant's footsteps coming down the hall. This wasn't a simple reflex anymore. Something else was going on here. The dogs were learning to predict the future. So how on earth does that happen? Well, what Pavlov figured out next became the scientific blueprint for how our brains form all kinds of automatic connections. He called this whole process classical conditioning. Okay, I know, it sounds a little technical, but it's basically just a fancy term for learning to have an automatic, involuntary reaction to something that you normally wouldn't react to at all. Let's break down exactly how it works. First, you start with something that's already hardwired, a natural reflex. For the dog, food is what we call the unconditioned stimulus. You don't have to teach a dog to like food. And the drooling, that's the unconditioned response. It's totally natural. Food in, drool out. Simple. Okay, next, Pavlov brought in something completely random, a ticking metronome. At first, this is a neutral stimulus. It means absolutely nothing to the dog. He plays the sound, and, you guessed it, nothing happens. It's just noise. And now for the magic. This is the key step. The pairing. Right before he'd bring out the food, Pavlov would start that metronome. Tick-tock, then food. Tick-tock, then food. He did this over and over and over again. The dog's brain starts to build a new connection. That sound means food is coming. And finally, the big test. Pavlov starts the metronome. But this time, there's no food. And what happens? The dog starts drooling anyway. That metronome isn't neutral anymore. It's become a conditioned or learned stimulus. And it's now triggering a conditioned response. A brand new automatic behavior has been created right before his eyes. So let's just do a quick recap of these terms because they're important. You start with the unconditioned pair, that's the unlearned stuff, the food and the natural drooling. And after the experiment, you have a new conditioned pair, the learned stuff. The metronome is now the stimulus, and the drooling it causes is the learned response. The brain literally transferred the reaction from one thing to another. So why does any of this matter? Because this isn't just about dogs in a lab over a century ago. This exact same process is running in the background of your life every single day. You ever get that full-body cringe just from looking at a picture of a needle? The needle itself is just plastic and metal. It's neutral, but your brain has powerfully connected it with the actual pain of an injection. So now just the sight of the needle has become a conditioned stimulus that triggers that cringe. And it works for good things too. You hear that cheerful little jingle from an ice cream truck? It's just a sound, but your brain has paired it with the awesome taste of ice cream. So now just hearing that music can literally make your mouth water and spark a craving. That is a conditioned response right there. And that brings us right back to where we started. That specific notification sound on your phone, it used to be totally neutral. But if you've gotten stressful work emails or urgent texts right after hearing it, again and again, your brain learns that association. The sound becomes a conditioned stimulus. And that jolt of anxiety you feel, that's the conditioned response. Your body is reacting to a past stress that isn't even there yet. And once you know what to look for, you see this process everywhere. Advertising is built on it, linking a car to a feeling of freedom or a soda to pure happiness. Phobias? That's often a neutral object, like a spider, that gets linked with a really scary event. Taste aversion? That's why you can't even stand the smell of a food that once made you sick. And even nostalgia, when a certain song or smell instantly transports you back in time. It's all conditioning. So what's the big idea here? Now that you know about this, what might you start noticing in your own life? I think the biggest takeaway is that this stuff is happening all the time, automatically. Your brain is a connection-making machine, and it's constantly pairing sights, sounds, and smells with feelings and reactions. And most of the time, it doesn't even ask for your permission. It's a survival tool running in the background. So the next time you feel a sudden, unexplainable emotion, that flash of fear, that wave of comfort, that jolt of anxiety from a simple sound, ask yourself, what did my brain learn to connect this to? It really makes you wonder, how many of our daily reactions are truly our own choice, and how many were just wired in a long, long time ago?